The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item is a public hearing. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code, to consider the third institutional master plan amendment filed by Harvard University. This hearing was duly advertised on November 17, 2017 in the Boston Herald. In a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the agency. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed for a brief period of rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Joel will now begin the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board, Secretary Polimas, Director Golden. I believe this is the fourth time, at least, that I've been before you with the Harvard Science and Engineering Complex, and given that Harvard held a topping off ceremony for the building yesterday, I certainly hope that it is the last approval that you need to entertain for the building. This is a simple matter, as you will hear in more detail from our friends at Harvard, to adjust the permitted square footage to account for some changes to the building and progress as the design has been programmed, as the design has evolved and the district energy facility was removed from the basement of the building and built and permitted as a freestanding facility. I'm available for any questions should you have any after the presentation, but I will turn it over to Mark Handley from Harvard to tell you more. You see some statistics there up on the screen. This has been and will continue to be a significant contributor to our housing and jobs trust funds, as well as a generator of employment in its own right, and a major investment in Boston's science and education infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Gerald.
Thank you. Thanks, Gerald. Good evening, Director Golden, Chairman Burke, and members. I'm Mark Handley. I'm the Director of Government and Public Affairs at Harvard University. We're excited to be here tonight to add some detail to this 50,000 square foot growth in the overall building program of the SEC building. As Gerald mentioned, this growth is interior to the building. The building footprint and the building massing is exactly the same as it was approved for. The growth is due to a densification in the program, primarily as a result of removing the interior district energy facility and installing it adjacent to the SEC site on a raised resilient slab. So over the course of 7 floors, the program of the building was allowed to densify to the degree that we would like to be here with you tonight. If I just advance quickly through the slides, this first slide orients you to the project area and the Harvard University IMP zone. Highlighted in red are the 3 parts of the approved project. On the left side, west side of the screen, is the site of the Science and Engineering Complex in the supporting area around it, and then you'll see to the east the DEF site. Focusing in a little closer on the actual SEC building, this is the future condition, the fully built condition for this phase of the building with the supporting streets in place. The graph there on the top right illustrates the exact areas of growth in the program, but the total there is approximately 50,000 square feet. And we are looking forward to proceed with a full build out of the building on track to open in the fall of 2020.
That conclude your...
Any questions? I can close
Okay.
the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Fairly straightforward. If there's no questions, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Is it a public hearing? So moved.
Oh, it's a public
hearing, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was confused.
My error. Sorry. We're out of order tonight, so it's like... Okay, so this is a public hearing. That concludes your presentation for now. Okay, there's no questions, so we'll proceed with the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Please step up, state your name. Anyone who would like to speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board, Minor Perez representing the Carpenters Union, would like to go on record in support of this project.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden, Gary Walker, Electrical Workers, Local 103, like to speak in strong support also. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? You would? Please, step right up. No? You did wave to me, though, right? No, because they're gonna think it's me, you know, it's, is there anyone else that would like to speak? All wave in opposition. Okay, hearing no opposition, are there any questions from the board? There are no questions from the board, so a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passed. Thank you very much, Mark. Come back again.
Anytime.
Is she with
Yes.
Okay. Item number 2 on the agenda. This is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider the second amendment to the second amended and restated development plan for 49, 51, and 63 Melcher Street, within Planned Development Area Number 69, South Boston, the 100 acres, located within the Fort Point Channel District of South Boston. The hearing was duly advertised on November 17, 2017 in the Boston Herald. The proposed amendment and fourth notice of project change seeks to acknowledge that 2,695 square feet of basement space at 63 Melcher Street will be altered, and the commercial project will become a condominium. In a BPDA hearing on a proposed petition by the authority, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed a period of 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BRA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Ms. Kerr will now proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. On December 4th, 2008, the Boston Redevelopment Authority Board voted to approve the development plan for 49, 51, and 63 Melcher Street within Planned Development Area Number 69, South Boston, the 100 acres, located within the Fort Point Channel District of South Boston. Since that approval, the development plan has been before the BRA board on several occasions, but as of February 2012, the property at 63 Melcher Street has functioned as a residential rental building with ground floor tenant amenity space. Here before us this evening is the fourth notice of project change and the second amendment to second amended and restated development plan, which was filed by JSIP 63 Melcher LLC on September 21st, 2017 for proposed changes at the 63 Melcher Street property. As described in the fourth NPC and the second amendment, the proponent proposes to change approximately 2,695 square feet of existing residential gross floor area in the basement of 63 Melcher Street to office and/or cultural and/or community use. A chart of the total square footage breakdowns for Planned Development Area Number 69, as current and as proposed with this NPC and amendment, is available on page 4 of your board memo. There are 38 total units at 63 Melcher Street. Separate from the use change in the Second Amendment, the Fourth NPC also seeks to change the building's 29 market rate units from rental units to homeownership units and submit 63 Melcher Street to a condominium. There are 9 units in the building that have been created under the inclusionary development policy. 4 of these units are innovation units, which were required in conjunction with the creation of the 63 Melcher Street project, and 5 are off-site artist live-work units built on behalf of the 319 A Street project. These 9 units will remain as income-restricted rental units and will be owned by a single entity as a condominium unit. The proponent has worked with the 4 Point Arts community to develop a unique partnership and intends to turn ownership of the affordable units over to FPAC at a later date. Excuse me. During the 45-day public comment period in connection with this filing, the BPDA hosted a public meeting on-site in the basement space of 63 Melcher Street to discuss the proposed changes. Representatives from the 4 Point Neighborhood Association and 4 Point Arts community spoke strongly in support of the project, while additional attendees expressed their appreciation for the proponent's unique approach to preserving the building's affordable units. Multiple comment letters were received and all voiced support for the project and proponent. The existing basement space at 63 Melcher Street is used regularly by the 4 Point Neighborhood Association and comparable organizations for neighborhood meetings. The proponent has included language in the commercial lease with the tenant of the renovated basement space to ensure that the space is made available between 8 and 12 times per year for 4 Point Neighborhood Association meetings and 2 to 3 times annually for 4 Point Arts Community open studio programs. The proponent will also be providing an estimated $21,209.65 in housing linkage funds and an estimated $4,231.15 in jobs linkage funds based upon the current plans. This 4th NPC and Second Amendment has received strong support from the Fort Point community, and the proponent, Jones Street Investment Partners, should be credited for the unique approach to ensuring the long-term preservation of the building's affordable units. As such, BPDA staff is pleased to support this amendment and recommend its approval. Thank you. I will now hand it over to Dennis McKenna, legal counsel for the proponent. Dennis, myself, and Matt Frazier of Jones Street Investment Partners will be happy to answer any questions should you have them after the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director, Madam Secretary, members of the board. I represent the proponent, 63 JSIP 63 Melcher LLC, the owner of the building. Just to situate us, that's the picture of the building at the corner of Melcher Street and A Street in the Fort Point neighborhood of Boston. And this notice of project change deals solely with the basement space, and you can see the windows that are on the ground level that are at the top of the basement space. Currently, that space is largely dark during the day, and it is occasionally used by the Fort Point Neighborhood Association and FPAC for community meetings, and it is tenant amenity space, but it's underutilized. On this slide, we're pointing out that as part of this notice of project change, there's going to be a conversion of the existing apartments into condominiums to provide permanent home ownership. We're going to activate the ground floor, and as Ms. Kerr mentioned, we've entered into a partnership with FPAC to ensure the long-term stability of the 9 affordable units. Currently, there's 29 market rate units, 5 affordable artist live-work units, and 4 affordable innovation units. And with this notice of project change, we're going to be providing permanent housing as an option in the Fort Point neighborhood, which, according to the neighborhood, there's a shortage of. Will improve the quality of the housing supply. We're going to provide residents that have a vested interest in the continued prosperity of the neighborhood, and the owners are going to rebrand the building to celebrate the artistic lineage of the building. The 4th notice of project change really deals with the basement space. So above the basement space are all the rental units. The basement space is amenity space, but it's not really utilized. As it is utilized, it's informally utilized as a common area for the neighborhood associations who meet there a handful of times during the year. What we, in conjunction with working with the FPNA and FPAC, have determined was a need there was some formalized access on an annual and perpetual basis to space that they could basically call their own. And as we, if this notice of project change is approved, which the sole change to the building will be changing the amenity space, the 2,695 feet of amenity space, into artist, cultural, or commercial space. We have sought out a lessee who would work with and be beneficial to the neighborhood, and we've identified joint venture partners, joint venture physical therapies that currently has 7 locations in the Boston area. And before we entered into a lease with them or incurred discussions with any potential lessee, we explained to them that as part of the lease, they would certainly need to make the space available for the neighborhood associations. And this is a pictorial, basically a plan of the basement space. At the bottom of the diagram is A Street. Along the right-hand side is Melcher Street, and the entrance area to the basement space is at the top far right. The area running along Melcher Street will be open space even as Joint Ventures Physical Therapy takes over the basement area. They basically have low impact usage during the day. There'll be no usage at night, and it'll be perfect for the neighborhood associations who want to take advantage of the space. Within the lease that we have proposed with joint ventures, they've agreed to make the space available 8 to 12 times a year. Plus, there's sort of a lending library, if you will, for the display of art that's currently there, and joint ventures has agreed to continue with that. And we're also, the other unique part of this is that within the master deed, we're going to, after the building has been condominiumized, the 9 affordable units will go all into one unit. And at some point in the future, will no longer be owned by the owner of the property. We're actually going to convey it to FPAC. And right now, as with most of the affordable restrictions in the city, there is an expiration date. But by doing that, we're basically ending the expiration date. So these 9 units will be transferred in perpetuity to FPAC. So these 9 units will not have an expiration. And so we think it's unique, and as Ms. Kerr mentioned, it's unique to this project and currently unique to the city, but might be something that could be picked up in other projects to assist with affordable housing going forward. I have, that's the presentation. As Ms. Kerr mentioned, one of the principals of Jones Street is here to answer any questions after the public comments.
Okay,
Thank you
very much. Are there any questions from the board at this time? No? Okay, so this is a public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Please step right up and state your name. Anyone else that would like to speak in favor?
Director Golden, members of the board, thank you very much for having me here. My name is Ray Rumphenauer. I'm from the Fort Point Arts community. We're here to express our support for this project. I think that many people know that the artists of Fort Point have been under a lot of pressure over the last 40 years, and retaining the artist population in that neighborhood, which is one of the things that makes Fort Point very special, has been a real challenge. But we see this project as a major step in the direction of preserving and also growing the artist population in the neighborhood. So we want to express our support for this project and for Jones Street. We also feel that this is an example of the kind of thing that we would love to see more of in the city in terms of a direct partnership with local community organizations, certainly FPAC as it relates to Fort Point, but other neighborhood arts groups more broadly to have real estate folded in directly to their long-term assets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Minor Perez, representing the Carpenters Union, would like to go on record in support of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. Once again, Gary Walker, Electrical Workers, Local 103. I'd like to speak in strong support also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Please step right up. Okay, hearing none. Is there any questions from the board?
I have a couple of questions. Where's the FPAC office now?
The current FPAC office is at 300 Summer Street.
Was any thought given to using a portion of this space as a kind of permanent site for FPAC?
FPAC just opened a brand-new space on the ground floor of the Envoy Hotel, which is going to become really our sort of flagship location. So I think that for us, we're not particularly in need of office space at the moment. But there was no consideration of that as it relates directly to this project for the ground floor commercial space.
Okay. And the 9 units that have been referenced here, which would be turned over at a later date. What does later date mean?
What it means is there needs to be a conversion to the project into condominiums, and then eventually the agreement reached between Jones Street and Fort Point is that after a certain number of years, and Mr. Frazier can probably give more details to that. I don't think a set date has been agreed upon.
Or time frame?
Hi, Matt Frazier from Jones Street Investment Partners. The agreement that we have in the future is we are going to structure the purchase in an arm's length transaction from the partnership directly to my firm with FPAC as a $0 partner in the entity that is buying it. We will operate it as is now, as rentals. Once we have earned back our initial capital through the free cash flow of the property and we're made whole, we will just turn it over to FPAC. When exactly that is, we can't predict the future. Our financial models would tell us it's 7 or 8 years from now.
Oh.
We're not profiting off of this, by the way. We're just getting our money back and turning it over to them.
And could you also comment on what it means to rebrand the building in some recognition of the role that the artists have had in this community?
Sure.
I think you and other folks know that I was one of the founders of FPAC, and this is one of the few neighborhoods in the city where artists essentially pioneered making it possible for the kind of development that you're now doing. And there was always an understanding that this day would come. But I think we would all want to know that, in fact, their presence, not only in the past but into the future, can be assured in perpetuity.
Absolutely. So to your last point first, the presence and maintaining that in perpetuity, we've done that through the structure that we put in place. That's part of the intent of the structure. The 5 artist units will, although there may be an affordable housing agreement that sunsets at some point, practically, as was mentioned before, FPAC will be the owner of it at that time. So there will be no practical sunset for those artist units. So that's the perpetual nature of the artist presence there. As far as the branding of the building, to your question, we've actually already started working with FPAC directly. They are participating in the rebranding process with us. We've come up with some pretty creative and great ideas, really being driven by FPAC as to how to rebrand the property. We're going to find some art, some old newspaper clippings that celebrate the neighborhood. Those will be on the walls on the inside of the building. We want to help tell the story of the building and the neighborhood through this rebranding process.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Congratulations. This is item number 3, which is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code to consider the Landmark Center project in the Fenway as a development impact project. The project consists of the construction of new 14-story buildings with approximately 506,000 square feet of office and laboratory use, and to adopt the 9th report and decision amendment to the Landmark Center Chapter 121A project. This hearing was duly advertised on November 17, 2017 in the Boston Herald. In a BPDA hearing on a proposed petition by the authority staff, members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed a period of 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they so desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Tim will now present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. This proposed project is located at 309 Park Drive, 201 Brookline Ave in the Fenway neighborhood. The proposed project is located on an approximately 383,000 square foot parcel and currently contains a retail and office complex, a movie theater, additional retail space, related parking areas, and the historic Sears Roebuck and Company building. The project site is generally bounded by Fullerton Street to the northeast, Brookline Avenue to the southeast, Park Drive to the southwest, and the MBTA Green Line to the northwest. You can see it right over there. The history of the Landmark Center project is detailed in your board memo, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have about it. On January 16, 2014, the BRA board approved a modification to the project that would allow 600 residential units in 4 buildings, 110,000 square feet of new retail use, 75,000 square feet of grocery use, 15,000 square feet of new office use, and new subsurface parking. The 2014 approved project was designed to be constructed in phases, and the first phase included creation of an approximately 1.1 acre open space on an existing parking lot, renovation and re-merchandising of the ground floor retail along Park Drive and Brookline Avenue, and other interior office and garage renovations. On May 11, 2017, the BPDA voted its authorization for the director to issue a partial certification of compliance for Phase 1, and much of that work is currently being implemented. The proponent filed a notice of project change on August 30, 2017. The major changes to the project in the MPC include maintaining and reconfiguring the existing parking garage, eliminating the 600 residential units and 4 towers, as well as the retail podium and grocery components, and expanding the office component. The proposed project, as described in the MPC, calls for the demolition of the building on the southwest corner of Brookline Avenue and Fullerton Street, and the construction in its place of a 14-story, approximately 208 feet tall, 506,000 square foot office and laboratory building with retail uses on its first 2 floors. The new building will be constructed around and above the existing parking garage, with some renovation to the garage entrance and demolition of the exterior ramps. The new building will include an approximately 6,000 square foot plaza on the corner of Brookline Avenue and Fullerton Street. The BPDA held a public meeting on September 27, 2017, and an Impact Advisor Group meeting on October 2nd to discuss the project and receive feedback from the neighborhood. While the proponent recommitted to the community benefits and mitigation that were approved with the 2014 project, a few new issues emerged as a result of the change. Members of the Impact Advisory Group requested that a contribution to the Emerald Necklace Conservancy that had previously been agreed to be increased from $100,000 to $150,000, and that those funds be targeted to maintenance of the recently completed Muddy River Restoration Project. The proponent agreed to that increase, and the BPDA will continue to work with the proponent, the Boston Parks and Recreation Department, and the Emerald Necklace Conservancy to coordinate a plan for those funds that achieve the ends desired by the IAG. Some neighbors to the project on Minor Street also raised concerns about noise from the loading docks behind Landmark Center. The proponent has proposed some physical and operational changes to the loading docks, as well as improved landscaping in that corner of the site to help mitigate those issues. The proposed project received approval from the Boston Civic Design Commission on November 7th, 2017. The proposed project is a development impact project with 506,000 square feet of DIP uses. The proposed project will provide an estimated $3,386,040 to the Neighborhood Housing Trust and an estimated $678,020 to the Neighborhood Jobs Trust. There's some additional benefits up on the screen right now. 3,000 new office jobs as a result of the office and laboratory uses. 450 plus feet of multi-use path. The proponent is working with MassDOT and BPDA to construct a multi-use path that'll connect the Emerald Necklace eventually to Yawkey Way, Yawkey Station, excuse me, as well as the 1.1 acres of new open space that is currently being constructed in front of the old Best Buy site. BPDA staff believes that the proposed project will be a positive addition to the Fenway neighborhood and is recommending approval of the proposed project. I'll now ask the development team to introduce themselves and present the project, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions after the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're very excited after many years of hard work on Landmark Center. We're excited to be back and present this development program. So as Tim said, we were here in 2014. We had an original plan to tear down our garage that's behind our building, build about 650,000 square feet of development in a retail podium and 4 residential buildings. We've now downscaled that a little bit. We're retaining the existing garage, building around it, building 1 building, and the total development square footage is about 150,000 square feet less. So when we decided to replan Landmark Center, we sat down with David's team and really took a look at our goals for the project and wanted to make sure that all of those goals were retained. Skip over this. So number one, most important goal that shaped this project was we were really inspired by the Emerald Necklace, by the Muddy River Restoration Project in front of the building. We wanted to connect to the Emerald Necklace, so we decided to convert the surface parking lot, the former Best Buy lot, into a 1.1 acre park. Overall, the site will include 2 acres of open space. We wanted to re-merchandise the ground floor retail. We've been very successful in getting most of the sort of former big box spaces back from the original tenants, and we are planning a lot of much more engaging street retail, finer grained, better streetscapes that we'll run through. We wanted to create a destination food experience in the building. We have a phenomenal operator called Time Out Market who we've partnered with. We've seen food halls all over the country. We think they're one of the best in the world, and will really activate that corner of the building. We wanted to improve transit connections to the neighborhood. We wanted to create permeability through the buildings so that it's a huge building and we didn't want it to be a barrier. So creating ground floor permeability, reorienting the building towards the neighborhood so it didn't just have sort of a front door and impenetrable walls. And for the vertical expansion, we've figured out a way to basically build around the garage and conceal it rather than tearing it down. So with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chairman Burke, Secretary Pohemus, members of the board, and Director Golden, good evening. I will be very brief. I think you all know where the site is on Brookline and Park Drive, and the opportunity, as Abe mentioned, to really connect this building to the Emerald Necklace. Phase 1 includes this brand new park, 1.1 acres of new open space in front of the old Sears building. This is Park Drive. This is Brookline Avenue. This replaces surface parking with new green space. Along Brookline Avenue, we're recreating all of the public realm, actually pushing that raised platform down so that there is better streetscape, more storefront that connects at the same elevation as the street itself. And as Abe mentioned, inside the building, really taking this building from somewhat of a suburban building in terms of its tenancy and really making it an urban building, responding to a generation of innovation users that will really recreate the environment within the building. First of all, the lobby transformed by removing the second floor, making a two-story space, creating that timeout market that Abe mentioned, which will occupy that entire southeast corner of the building. The site itself, again, you see Brookline, the Muddy River, and Park Drive. And again, what we're really trying to do is take what was an impenetrable block and make it quite porous and penetrable through the building itself, in the north-south direction, in the east-west direction, through that timeout market, and then take advantage of that footprint along Fullerton to create this new building. The building, as you have known it for years, with that surface parking out front, and Brookline Avenue, as you have known it as well. And so the goal is really to transform that most important corner between, at the intersection of Brookline and Kilmarnock, which has become a real hub of pedestrian activity. And so the site, there's the Sears building, Landmark Center, and we will demolish the corner. We'll demolish that ramp that's on the perimeter of the building, which is a not very friendly pedestrian edge. And this represents the footprint of new building. You'll notice that new building is set back 60 feet from Brookline Avenue, and the point is that this intersection of Kilmarnock, Fullerton, and Brookline has really become an incredibly active pedestrian environment, with all of the retail that's happened on Brookline, all of the new tenancies that have happened throughout the Fenway. And so you can see a new building, the opportunity really to transform Fullerton Street. Today, the existing building hangs almost, goes right to the curb, and there's a kind of arcade. We will pull the new building back, creating a new right turn lane and a sidewalk that's open to the sky, that you can see here the opportunity. We're actually pulling that building footprint back, creating a real sidewalk that hasn't been there, and creating that new right turn lane. And so the 2014 approval from this board included the 4 residential buildings. And now our proposal is a single building, a commercial building, 14 stories, about 480,000 square feet, to house the kind of innovation activity that clearly has come to the Fenway. I showed you a moment ago, very quickly, a view down Kilmarnock. That's Trilogy on the left, and that's Brookline Avenue kind of here in the foreground. And this is the new building. And clearly, we think of this as part of a composition with the Pierce, with the Sears building, and this building. We believe we are creating an environment for the innovation and tenants of the future, but being inspired by the kind of space that's in the Landmark building, the kind of space that these companies want to make part of their culture, meaning this is concrete floors, wide open spaces, lots of glass, and a building that is always in the act of becoming what its tenants want it to become. At street level, that's the space we're creating outside the building that we think can be kind of a reservoir of all of the pedestrian activity. Ground floor retail, and even the possibility of second-story retail, about 15,000 square foot total. Retail on the corner that activates that edge, makes Fullerton a more pedestrian-friendly street, entrance to the building, and the 7,000 square feet of open space outside the building. So again, Brookline Avenue, Fullerton, that new sidewalk, the new open space out in front of the building, everything pink is retail space. The entrance into the core of the building, really minimal frontage, creating as much use of a public uses of a public accommodation as possible. The entrance ramp reconfigured so that we have a minimal curb cut on Fullerton Street. Very simple floor plan to accommodate the kinds of users that we anticipate here. And then very quickly, this is kind of the illustration of my comment about composition with the Sears building, with Pierce, and with the new proposed building. A view along Brookline Avenue, the historic Sears building with its tower, the new proposed building, that kind of gap in space in between, allowing this building to truly come to the ground. And then along Fullerton Street. And you noticed a couple of kind of indentations in the building, creating outdoor space for those tenants. And then finally, a section through the building. This is Park Drive, the Muddy River here to the right, the tower of the Sears building. And as Abe mentioned, we are demolishing a piece of that garage. We're not creating, the net parking spaces is the same as it was. Long view down, basically from Yawkey Way, from Fenway Park, all the way down Brookline to the building beyond, and then a long view from the Fens, Muddy River in the foreground, Pierce on the right, Sears building, and the proposed building. And then simply that outdoor space where we're hoping food service here spilling out, but in any case, as I mentioned, the opportunity to really provide space for all of the pedestrian activity that has come to life here.
Just very briefly on the project benefits, the approach has been we've honored all of the original project mitigation. The project's been downsized a little bit by about 150,000 square feet. We're doing all of the original mitigation and in some cases expanding our commitments. So the new parks, the new plazas and sidewalks, we're doing a $1 million public art program as part of phase 1, making the contribution to the Emerald Necklace Conservancy, all of the streetscapes and retail improvements and permeability that we talked about. We're also building a multi-use path along the back of the building, along the railroad tracks as part of a sort of public-private partnership with the city. We're building about a third of the path connecting Longwood to the Yawkey station, and rebuilding the Fullerton-Kilmarnock Street sidewalk intersection, expanding it to include a wide sidewalk and bike accommodations as well. Also making a contribution, $100,000 to the Emerald Audubon Circle Maintenance Fund. We're studying some potential improvements to the Riverway that we've been asked to look at. The buildings LEED Gold certified will include state-of-the-art energy efficiency improvements, about 30,000 square feet of green roofs and stormwater recharge systems as well under the new park and additional stormwater recharge in phase 2, creating about 3,000 new transit-oriented jobs and making a DIP contribution of about $4 million. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions at this time? Before we have the public hearing?
Oh, I'll wait until after. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Please step right up. Anyone that would like to speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, once again, Minor Perez, representing the Carpenters Union, would like to go on record in support of this project.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary, Director Golden, once again, Gary Walker, Electrical Workers Local 103, I'd like to speak in strong support also. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Sir, would you please step right up and state your name, and anyone else that would like to speak, you can step right up.
I'll just give one moment. Hi, thank you. And my name is Michael Simons, and I'm the chairman of the Board of Trustees of 16 Minor Street, a residential condo building directly abutting the project with 53 owners, and another one of the, I'm one of 3 board members. Another board member is here this evening, and I'm representing the owners of that 16 Minor Street. So the handout that I gave to the esteemed panel is to the massing of the building. Elkis Manfredi, the Abbey Group, the former owners, Samuels Associates, Fenway Development Group, they're amazing people, and we're generally for the project. It's just there's a few things to be succinct. One is the consolidation of 4 separate buildings, which were retail, which were residential, into one office and commercial lab space building. So we've taken the massing of 4 separate buildings and we've
put that into one building. The net number is less, however, the density and the footprint of that building, the one building that remains, is much larger as well as higher. If you look at the handout that you have, you will see that there's a 14-story building, but it's not a residential, it's a commercial lab office building, and the floor spacing is higher than what was previously proposed in a residential building. Additionally, there's 40 feet of mechanicals on the roof that get added to the 208-foot height that exists on the building, so we're close to 250 feet high. And that building runs 3/4 of the way down Fullerton Street. So it's a very large building that looms over a 53-unit, 6-story condominium building. What we'd like to see is a couple of stories come off. What we'd also would like to see is a noise mitigation. The current retail that exists there has, for a 7-year period, it's been excessive for noise, delivery, trash. It's documented, and it was handed in with, and we don't feel it was mitigated currently, and it's certainly going to be more so moving forward. And the final thing is the traffic exiting the garage to make it go a certain way rather than block up Minor Street.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Appreciate it. We have this. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition? Please step right up. Anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay. Are there any questions from the board at this time?
I just want to say that I'm very fond of the Landmark Center. My old neighbor in Jamaica Plain, Patrick Sullivan, worked in the boiler room there for 42 years. And every time I go there, I think about him. And I'm glad to see it's getting a little bit of upgrade with the park, and it's an elegant building that deserves the attention that it's getting here. And but the garage is not very user-friendly. It's a very challenging garage, and so I'm wondering what you're going to be doing to improving the garage.
So we're actually renovating the garage as well. You're right. It is one of the toughest garages to park in the city, I think, right now. We are restriping it, putting in new wayfinding. Paint goes a long way. Paint and good lighting helps a lot. We're also restriping it because it was originally striped for very, very narrow spaces at a time when there was more automobile usage, and the prior owner needed to satisfy some lease obligations. So we found that those spaces aren't used, and we've been able to stripe it for two space per stall instead of 3, get the same utilization, and a more user-friendly experience.
Thank you. My other question is about the grocery store. There was originally going to be a grocery store in this retail space, and there doesn't seem to be any mention of that. And can you comment about the lack of a grocery store?
Yeah, so in our original plan, I mean, that was one of the reasons we needed to tear down the garage, was in order to create a large enough footprint for a larger grocery store. Now that we're working within the sort of existing architecture, we are working very hard to figure out how to put a grocery store in. It'll probably be more of an urban grocer, similar to what you might see in Downtown Crossing or in the South End, some of the recent grocery stores that have been built. A little bit of a smaller configuration, more geared towards the needs of an urban market.
Great, that's all my questions.
Okay, any further questions?
I'm not so worried about a grocery store because there is a supermarket across the street, which has been there for a number of years, which I use on a regular basis, and it's always crowded. So unlike other neighborhoods in the city where a lot of building has taken place, there is access to that kind of amenity. But I'm more concerned about the fundamental change that's being made. Before this change, there were an additional 600 units of housing in the city's pipeline, and now they seem to be gone. So my first question is, why is this change being made? And not only in light of the 600 units that some of us thought would be going into the neighborhood, but also in relation to the benefits that normally accrue to the city when we do approve housing units. And by that I mean affordable units, contributions to the Job Trust, and a range of other amenities. I'm very appreciative of the environmental contributions that you're making and the work to connect to the T station and the like, but I'm more curious about the fundamental change and also some of the impacts that that will have. 600 units of housing have one kind of impact on a neighborhood. 3,000 jobs have a very different kind of impact on the community in relation to traffic and usage of what has become a very congested neighborhood.
So, Jonathan Greeley, Director of Development Review here at the BPDA, member Landsmark. I think you're right. 3,000 jobs have a dramatic impact on the neighborhood, and I would argue a dramatic impact in the city, and it's a positive one. So, I think it's important to note that one of the challenges of the recent growth of the development, with the tens of millions of square feet of development we've approved in recent years, it's been largely residential. And that's great, and I think we've got a robust goal, and as we've stated in other venues, we are halfway to achieving the mayor's 53,000 housing units. We are well ahead of schedule and getting there by 2030. So we spent a lot of time in this agency and in this room talking about robust housing for the city of Boston. What I think is exciting about this project, you have to take it as a multi-phase project. There's significant investment in open space, public transit, investment in the building that Member Downs, our Treasurer Downs, mentioned as well, as an evolving, taking a historic resource, not knocking it down, but finding a way to revitalize it and renew it. And that's the third phase here, is adding on to that. So we're excited about, because this is providing a much needed relief valve for the Longwood medical area, which over 100,000 people live, seek treatment and work and study at every single day, just blocks away. And so this is a needed outlet to increase the commercial footprint of the Fenway and the city. I would also note that the Samuels Group at the Van Ness building just blocks away just created a several 100,000 square foot office building that was met with great fanfare and was sold out, built on spec, and is fully leased out upon opening. And so one of the things that's worth noting is that I think the growth in any neighborhood should have balance. And the Fenway has experienced tremendous residential growth. From a planning perspective and a BPDA perspective, we're excited about the non-residential, the commercial growth, which is really important to our city, and as important, because if people come here to live, they also need to come here to work. I would like the Samuels team to address how they mitigate those impacts, because I think there's no doubt that a commercial building has very different impacts from a residential building. They're different, and in both cases have to be mitigated. But I do want, just to state for the record, at a high level here, we're excited about the potential to grow Boston's commercial footprint.
Thank you, Jonathan. Peter Sugaridis with Samuels and Associates. I've had the pleasure of working with Steve Samuels for 17 years now in redeveloping the Fenway neighborhood. And a valid question about the uses, I will say that we've developed over 1,200 units over the last 10 years that we've delivered to the Fenway market, in addition to another 600 units that have been built by other developers. And so, as Jonathan talked about, we do talk about balance, and with David Manfredi, we always talk about how do we balance the retail components, the residential, and the office components, so that there is more of a 24/7 environment. So during the day, it doesn't turn into a very quiet neighborhood. And so what we've seen in the last 10 years since we just celebrated the 10th anniversary of Trilogy, which was the first new development in the Fenway, from converting all of the old parking lots and gas stations. We've seen there's a great vibrancy, during the day, because we now, for the first time, have office folks who are working here, and at night we have people who live here and are coming home. And so it's really created a great balance in a neighborhood that feels good all day long. Coffee shops in the morning, Saturdays the coffee shops are filled with the people who are living there. During the day, there are people out at lunchtime, whereas just 10 years, not 5 years ago or 6 years ago, the sidewalks were really barren. So we look at this as a way to balance, and the Fenway, excuse me, has a great vibe with the retail that's been created in the streetscape, and so I think, excuse me, that's created a great environment to expand more jobs. We have other properties in the Fenway, and we do think that we will definitely keep building residential, and again, and keep trying to create that balance of not tilting too much into one direction or the other, office or residential.
And what's your expectation of the kinds of jobs that are going to be
created here?
Yeah, created here. I mean, I see that you're making reference to transit-oriented, and I know that doesn't mean transit jobs as such, but jobs wherein presumably people will not be driving into the neighborhood, but it'll be taking the Green Line and other modes of transportation. But what are the kinds of jobs that are likely to be generated here, and to what extent are they likely to be the kinds of jobs that Boston residents will be able to occupy?
Great
other
question.
than the maintenance jobs?
Yeah, it's great questions. I think what we've seen, and I guess the best way to answer the question is really talk about some of the companies that have moved in the last 36 months. We've seen companies move in a variety of companies, everyone from Optum, for instance, did not have a presence in the city of Boston. They opened their first office in Boston in the Fenway, and they hired 800 folks. Most of those jobs, 600 or so, 500 to 600 were new jobs. Lots of young folks coming out of college, living in the neighborhood. We have companies like Toast, that are a technology company. They've grown from 30 people 2 years ago when they came, and they now have over 400 people. And again, all local folks. And a lot of that, when we say local, we see it from the usage of the garage. And generally, overall, I've seen, again, been at it for 17 years, parking usage has been down over the years. And so we see that people riding bikes, we create more bike parking spaces every year over year. We keep adding bike parking facilities. We've added shower facilities to make bike riding, again, a comfortable environment. So I think it's in other companies. Whoop, for instance, is a company, a homegrown company that came out of Cambridge with 3 people, and they've now grown to 40 people and are selling their product worldwide. So it's a variety of companies, Children's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, companies that have been in the neighborhood for many years, and companies that are just starting and growing and putting roots down. So I think, as Jonathan has said, I think the team looks at it as great for the neighborhood and great for the city as a whole.
I'm asking these questions because I think it's safe to say that Samuels has done more to transform a neighborhood than any other single developer in the city in terms of bringing in new residential and commercial uses. And I think by and large people would say that that's a positive impact on the Fenway, and your contributions to the environmental factors, the conservancy and the like are, I think, to be applauded. At the same time, what you've done is a model for what the city in its strategic planning process is looking forward to doing in other parts of the city. And one of the apparent consequences of the kind of development that you've done is that we have created a lot of new housing and employment opportunities for people who don't live in Boston or who may be just graduating from college, as opposed to creating opportunities for the kinds of people who are coming out of our public school system. And at some point, as planners, it seems to me we need to think about the ancillary benefits and effects that take place when we transform a neighborhood into something that it wasn't before, which may well be better, but not necessarily as beneficial as we would hope for those people who will not be commuting the big distances that we see people commuting into the city for at this moment. And so the loss of 600 units of housing from the pipeline implies that there will be probably fairly high-level workers in these buildings. And it does raise some questions for us as a planning agency as to what the linkage is between what we approve and who the beneficiaries of those approvals are. So it's not to put you folks on the spot, because I think you've done a terrific job, but it is to raise the question in a larger sense of who is served by some of the development that we've approved, and how we look forward at this point to the development of the city in the way that is most beneficial to the many people who already live here. But thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you for the positive comments on our work.
I have one more question.
Sure, right
I have one more question. I think since your neighbor from the Minor Street Condo Association is here, maybe you could comment on some of the concerns they have raised around the noise mitigation and traffic mitigation coming out of the garage.
Sure. Just by way of history, the Landmark building was renovated by prior owners, the Abbey Group, in 1999. At that time, the condominium building did not exist. We purchased the building. So the loading dock, I guess, pre-existed prior to the condominium project being built. The condominium project is located sort of kitty corner to the existing loading dock that was there in place maybe 10 years prior to the condo building being built. It's adjacent also to the Green Line tracks, just as the Green Line tracks go underground into a tunnel. I think, as a matter of fact, the condo building is partially built over the tunnel of the Green Line. There are several different retailers. And there is an active loading dock, so yes, there have been some issues with noise. Some of them out of our control, but brought to our attention, and we have put in place a system to work with our tenants. Again, tenants, trucks and delivery services are coming in. We have our set hours. There are rules and regulations in the leases, but again, it's not a perfect world, so we can't control when a trucker comes in off hours and they decide to unload. We have been talking to the Condo Association of better policing the loading dock, putting in surveillance, and also setting up a hotline so that they can contact us, because again, they're there, and if we're not there, that if we know about it, we can do something about it. So I think we've got a great dialogue with them to deal with this. In terms of the other comment with respect to the massing of the building, we've actually moved the massing of the building away from the neighborhood, away from the condominium, away from the Audubon Circle neighborhood, so closer to Brookline Ave. We're within a couple of feet of where we were on the prior building, the residential building, in terms of the height of the building. I think we're maybe 3 feet higher than the prior approved building. So we looked at it as a positive that we're moving the building away from the neighborhood, reducing the square footage, overall square footage. Yes, it is a single mass, but we're moving it more towards the commercial side of the project on Brookline Ave. But we are committed to continuing to work with them on any of the noise mitigation issues.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations. We need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
We adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.
there are people in this room from the for-profit worlds. We want to educate our young people so they can be potentially the future Bank of America presidents in Massachusetts.
Our students do not lack for energy, curiosity, persistence,